Hi, everybody, and welcome to Zero Shot Anti-Hype AI Business Podcast. Our purpose today is to move beyond the theory, explain some of the tangible business impact of especially data sovereignty. But to introduce you a little bit to the podcast, I'm James Gauci, CEO of Cadent, and as always, I'm joined by Mr. Llew Jury. How's it going, Llew?
How you going? Welcome to episode 4. Wow, time's flying, isn't it, James? And so pumped to be here. And yeah, Llew Jury, Managing Director of Advancer, the AI agency.
Excellent. If you're joining us for the first time, in this show, we really try to cut through the noise and try to bring you both the technical side of AI, but also the business reality and making sense of it, especially in such a complex landscape as it is. We want to project ahead to 2026 and help you, well, we're in 2026 now, we don't have to project very far, just to help you understand who's winning, how to position your business for what's coming. So what are we going to cover today, Llew?
Today, it's all about sovereignty and data and protecting your edge in 2026. It's about how to identify, I suppose, James, the strategic moat in your data, which is becoming so important. And also, from my point of view, really understand what sovereignty and data and how AI works together to make sure you're, even if you're an SME, you've got enterprise grade security and things like that.
It always feels like a bit of a sunk investment when we talk about it around the table, but maybe we can find the ROI in the conversation today around these kinds of topics.
Definitely.
And Llew, we've got a wonderful sponsor that has joined us on this journey this year. Do you want to tell us about Prompt Cowboy?
Yeah, so thanks, James. This episode is brought to you with thanks to Matt and Henry at promptcowboy.ai, the fastest way to turn everyday business tasks into automated workflows. Prompting is becoming so important in every business. And if you ever wished that you had a digital ranch hand that you could lasso and do all those repetitive things, the repetitive work for you with AI, Prompt Cowboy delivers. From AI prompts to full automation, they wrangle hard to get your business focused on what matters. Head over to promptcowboy.ai and get your business riding smoother than ever. Actually, I've reached out to Matt, listeners and viewers, and we may have a special guest coming in the very near future, that starts with opt and ends with oi. So, we'll see what happens.
Fantastic. We're really looking forward to that. Today, let's talk about sovereignty. It's a word that's getting thrown around a lot. It's hard to know what kind of sovereignty we're talking about sometimes, whether it's data sovereignty or AI sovereignty, or what does AI sovereignty mean? Is it a capability? Is it a big data center? Well, let's try to demystify all of this, some of this stuff, because what I've heard especially over the last, let's say 4 weeks, here we are in mid-February 2026, coming out of the World Economic Forum, there's a changing world order, it seems. A lot of the middle powers like Canada and the UK and Europe and the smaller Asian countries and Australia, we all feel like we want to band together all of a sudden, maybe. What's your read on this situation?
Yeah, Davos has been a bit of a turning point, I think. Let's go back a step. What did data sovereignty mean many years ago? It probably is that 10-year play in our vintage, James. It goes way back, and we don't want to go too far back. It's like dog years in the AI game. If you go 10 years back, that's like 70 years, isn't it? But look, if you go back about 10 years, GDPR was big in the UK. It's where you could ring up that supplier or that website and say, hey, I want my data, my own sovereign data removed from your platform. And that was huge, wasn't it? That was the first sort of really key watershed moment in the public domain that sort of came out. But it's been happening, as a sort of a core element of enterprise, especially for many, many years. And there's lots of people talking about data sovereignty. But now with AI, as you said, it blurs the lines, and it's now at a macro level with, the government level, but right down to every single business. If they want to nail their AI strategy and their agentic AI strategy, they're going to need great data. Now, does that mean they need the sovereignty, and where do they put it, and all of those sort of balls in the air? So it's now a legitimate moment to consider it across the board.
And it kind of brings into play some of these ideas that have been around in Australia for such a long time. Things as seemingly simple as the Privacy Act. Like, it's so easy now to jump onto a free instance of ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, and just give over a lot of personal data about yourself, about your friends. And a lot of times, and it's the classic case of if the product's free, then you're probably the product. They will use that information to train models And so that idea of privacy is really core to this. And how worthy of trust are the organizations that are designing and deploying these systems from your perspective as a business person? Not just overall as like, do we trust the US? Do we trust Europe? Do we trust Australia? It's more about, can I rely on that agreement that I have with that company to do what they say that they will do? And do I even have an agreement with that company? And if something went wrong, who would be accountable? So let's try to unpack some of that. Let's kind of hark back a little bit to the data sovereignty stuff, Lou, because I know that you've worked a little bit with data warehousing, data lakes, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that interfaces with this concept of sovereignty in your work so far and from your perspective.
Well, I think, yeah, it's a good question. In my world, at the sort of the medium-sized business world, data sovereignty generally is it's come from an Access database 25 years ago into an SQL7 database. It then got backed up and, then it maybe has gone into some sort of bridging environment, and then the cloud kicked in. And so everything then went into the cloud, or some stayed within the proprietary auspices of that business. But now in sort of 2026, we've got organizations moving really quickly out of that, and generally they've got a data warehouse. The starting point for these medium to large organizations is a data warehouse, and that's a sort of a warehouse that allows a structured data set, if you like, to be gathered from some of the systems that might be within the organization. And that allows people like data scientists and analysts and BAs and financial controllers to actually then come in and access some of that data. Some of the listeners and viewers might, know the Power Automate and the Power BI and the business intelligence tools, which were the first dashboards, if you like, of actually viewing and visualizing that to the board level and the marketing managers and all of that sort of thing. So
I've had fever dreams
of
about Microsoft Dataverse in the past, like scar tissue from those experiences.
Scar tissue, yeah, absolutely, mate. And so what's happened is the world has been forced into an unstructured environment. An unstructured environment goes back to the commentary that you made from the sort of the privacy level. Absolutely. But what's happened is AI right now in the last 12 months has been sort of forcing organizations into more of an unstructured world that needs to have more of a data lake, and that can consume data from the data warehouse. So bear with us if you sort of start to zone out here and we talk about lakes and warehouses and all these amazing things. But what we're trying to sort of show is that to do AI properly, you need to consider two core things. One is your data stack and your own data, generally your own data portions of information that you're actually going to take in. That generally has to be unstructured. As I said, that's not sort of in nice relational tables and things like that. AI prefers to feed on the unstructured world. And the other thing is you've got to ask that question about your own sovereignty. Are you going to send this out to someone's server farm or are you going to try and keep it internal? And there's pros and cons for both. What we're seeing a lot of is, because we generally do partner with the SME space, we're seeing a lot more in the cloud-based platforms, and we're getting some great results from those because they're generally the better ones. And there's some that everybody will have heard about, Databricks and Snowflake and all those large global ones. But there's some coming through that my business Advancer works with that are on Google Cloud or GCP, and they use BigQuery to enable the AI then to feed on those data sets. So that's effectively your own sovereignty. If you want that, you can actually then sort of say that I've got that. However, James, do you want to talk about in that enterprise space, in government space, that whole, bringing the server farms back in, really protecting sovereignty within their own auspices?
Yeah, I think just to kind of zoom out a little bit on the concept of sovereignty, it's really tempting to go straight into the weeds of like, this is the kind of data you need, and this is where you need to put it, and this is why, and stuff like that. But it's important to understand that sovereignty is a bit of a catch-all term in some ways, because when we talk about sovereignty in AI, we're often, we could be talking about the autonomy of a business or a group of people and their agency and empowerment with AI. So that might be capability, it might be the availability of tools and resources. But conversely, when we talk about sovereignty from a government perspective, we're talking about the same thing, except at a national level. So when people say sovereign AI, they could be meaning a lot of different things. And so whenever somebody utters that magical kind of phrase, it's worth probing a little bit to ask them, what do you mean by sovereign AI in this case? Are you talking about we need big data centers onshore? Are you talking about we need loads of GPUs? We need to buy them from anyone who'll sell them to us? Or are you talking about, hey, we should be building frontier models in Australia? Or just something as simple as we need to develop capabilities in small and medium businesses so that we don't get left behind on the global stage. So
look, it's so complex, isn't it? And this is the thing. And throw in there as well that I think the piece that comes out at different levels right now, no one really knows what that actual definition is. They get wind of it at a conference or hear from one of their engineers, but they actually truly don't know. I think the ones that truly know where they sit are the healthcare providers. And I think that they often come to us saying, we must host our sovereign data and our proprietary data and the actual data of patients, our patient and personal information in Australia on Australian servers. We need to be able to show that piece of paper for insurance, for regulation, which we'll get to in a sec, and all those things. So I agree with you. Definition, it's all over the place, and it means so many different things to so many different people.
So maybe we can begin to kind of land that plane conceptually. Like, what does AI sovereignty or sovereign AI mean to a business person in 2026? And I think it has to start with data and the residence of your data. And in the cloud hosting, AWS, GCP kind of space, Microsoft Azure as well, there's been a big push over a very long time now for everybody to get their data into the cloud. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, their data is oftentimes going offshore, especially when they're working with intermediaries who might be running hosting for them. So like there's a tool that gets thrown around a lot on social media for AI people called Hostinger. So if you choose to host with Hostinger, they're using probably AWS under the hood, and you might, if you're lucky, get a choice of which data center you want to put it in. But sometimes that's a configuration that people don't even know exists, and all of a sudden a ton of sensitive information of their own or of their clients is offshore. So what people don't always know is that might be a breach of that person's privacy and entitlement to their data, or it might be a breach of their consent. If you haven't said explicitly in whatever agreement you have with a customer and you're sending that data offshore, that this information is handled and processed by third parties, to your GDPR point earlier, may not ever happen, but you might be in for some legal trouble. I don't think it's...
What about insurance as well, James? Like, I don't think anybody checks their insurance policy, your PI, your PL, all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of cyber stuff now in insurance policies, and you're having to take out cyber plans. But are people taking out plans or getting their brokers or whatever to actually put sovereignty, data protection, to your point, privacy protection? Is that happening?
Cyber insurance covers a lot of that privacy, data crossing borders, or particularly getting breached. So that's what your cyber insurance generally covers. If you are subject to a cyber attack and for whatever reason there's information that's like PII, personally identifiable information, is breached, or your systems have gone down, it's affected your business, et cetera, that's what cyber insurance generally covers. But what it doesn't cover right now is AI security. Not effectively enough. Like, for example, a couple of years ago, the Australian government came out with one of the discussion papers in their discussions around AI regulation, whether or not to regulate, et cetera. And they suggested that we should probably look at having AI insurance in industry, and there might be a business there. So, any insurance brokers or underwriters listening to the podcast, it might be an untapped market there. But yes, there are unique aspects to AI security and particularly user behavior around AI, because it's so ubiquitous, that will not be covered by your cyber insurance. And so it's worth having that conversation with your provider, your broker.
And I suppose before we move on, let's talk about the Australian business owner, the legal requirements. Is it a buzzword? Is it going to be like, AI work slot was the buzzword for 2025. Corey Dictionary, I think, even framed it. Is sovereignty going to be the one in 2026? Is it a legal requirement, James? Is it like, where are we up to with the really quickly from a business perspective?
Look, I think It depends. Like the short answer is it depends on the sector that you're working in as to what you're required to do and the kind of information you're handling on behalf of your customers. If you're in let's say you're an electrician, like let's just pick a standard kind of small business like an electrician. They'll have email addresses and phone numbers and, information about jobs and things like that. They might be running through their Copilot. The question is that version of Copilot in the US or is it in Australia? If it's in the US, you might be infringing some regulation. If it's in Australia, then you'll be fine. But it is incumbent on businesses to have a look at the things that they're signing. And I know it's hard, and let's not get into the ethics of those gigantic terms and conditions things that we just tick and flick. But it does, there's room in the market for somebody to check that, like a choice or like maybe not the e-safety commissioner, but somebody in that kind of realm to actually name and shame the organizations that aren't being fully upfront about where their data is going and why, and who has the resources and the motivation to actually look under the hood of those kinds of things.
I think where it's got to is it's a bit like the carbon accounting world, which is being regulated down. If you do 2 billion, that was 2 years ago. If you do 1 billion, that's now. If you do 500 million revenue, you're going to have to do scope 3. So I think it's going to be like that. I don't think it's hitting the micro to SMEs at the moment, but
No.
you're not going to be able to win. You're not going to be able to win some government contracts of any substance without a really good, sovereignty type plan and stack and position and all of that, right?
Yeah, you're referring a little bit to to trust, like how trustworthy is this system that I'm using, and probably the best piece of advice that I could give to somebody in any sector right now is to go and have a look at the AI 6 that came out from the government. A lot of us will be familiar with the Essential 8, which is for information security, cybersecurity. This is the Essential AI 6, so it's another set of controls which are different, but it covers a lot of the hallmarks, like the low-hanging fruit that most business owners can give a yes or no answer to when they're assessing a new AI system to actually bring it into their business, or have a look at their own organization and how they handle AI within the organization. The number one thing is accountability. Who in the organization is responsible for this? Who's going to have to step up in front of the magistrate one day and explain why the AI misbehaved and that kind of thing. And that's the first step to building good governance within an organization and getting the trust of your customers in the systems that you're using.
Yeah. It's an interesting time, isn't it? And not every business needs to run out after this podcast and react and do all that. But you need a deliberate position, I suppose, is the key message from our opening statement. So what be aware is what you're sort of referring to there, James. Be aware what data can you leave, what you can't leave. Check your insurance policies and ask why. I actually think everybody should be doing a bit of an audit right now. And I think you summed up really well. Drifting into public models is something I've heard before that I think that if you just drift into these public models, you don't know where your data set's going. Right?
It's easy to it's easy to do it by accident as well. Like,
totally.
Let's imagine you've got your Chrome browser in front of you, and you've got your work profile and you've got your personal profile, and you're flicking between the two during the day, and all of a sudden you accidentally paste that PDF that you got from your sensitive customer into Google's machine. You accidentally use the one that isn't protected by the organization's agreement with Google. You've pasted it into the free and public version that's connected to your account, which they can train on then. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts, so we won't rehash it again. That is a breach. That could be a breach of intellectual property, could be a breach of privacy, could be a breach of contract. And it's just something to be, like you say, to be aware of.
Yeah. So really good probably time to move on to, the moat, isn't it? Data is the only real moat, and identifying which data sets must stay, I suppose, let's call it behind the corporate firewall. James, do you want to talk through your observations, because you work in this world a bit more, about sort of that decision and how you actually come up with that and how you make decisions within organizations?
Yeah. There's a bit of a chicken and egg situation happening at the moment over the last, this is a 10-year chicken and egg situation, but do we start with data governance or do we start with information security governance? And now all of a sudden we've got AI governance vying for people's money. And so the important thing to realize is that it's all pointing to the same idea, which is when we're handling information, we should kind of know how sensitive or important it is. And so having even a simple approach to classifying information in your organization is really, really important. Like internal and external, how about that? It can be as simple as that. And that's a start.
Nice and easy. I'm all about keeping it simple.
Exactly. Within internal, you might then divide it up again. And so it's a maturity process that takes quite a long time to cultivate in any size of business, let alone ones that are...
James, when you get to an organization like that, have they done that work? Have they gone internal, external, or is it varying degrees of sort of awareness and positioning?
So imagine on one axis, we've got policies, and then on another axis, we've got practices. And then imagine that there's a quadrant there where some organizations have neither policies nor practices. Some organizations have practices, but not really policies, but not really many practices. And then there's the holy grail, which is like you've got policies and practices, and now let's just try and get continuous improvement happening. It really is a mixed bag throughout the economy, and some types of organizations are more mature in this way than others. I think that the key takeaway that I would give to any small business, especially when it comes to data governance, information security, cybersecurity, AI governance, is to start where you are. Don't wait for some perfect planets aligning kind of situation, like, oh, we've got that person who can do that thing, and we've got this supplier, and when we sort that policy out, we'll sort the other policy out. Just be honest with yourself, be mindful of where you are and what you can feasibly achieve. Just make a start. And that's why a lot of the resources that come out from, sounding like a federal government shill at the moment, but the AI6 documentation is really good. They've got some draft policies and risk registers and stuff there. It's worth just having a click through and seeing what would be easy to implement in your organization today. Like, if we don't have an AI policy right now, or if we don't have a ton of other policies, could I just copy and paste that into my Google Drive or my OneDrive and then say to everybody, hey, here's our new policy. Let's have a lunch and learn and talk about it and what it means for us.
I think that's the critical. Yeah, look, great tip, because I think that's, to me, data, the eyes glaze over. Like, there's only a few people in the world that get, fired up on data. We know that AI, data is so important now to a successful AI strategy and agentic AI, and especially training agents and things like that. But if you don't train your people, you can put a policy out there and tick the box and go, hey, we've now got data sovereignty, and we've got this, and here's a policy, and the government, we downloaded that, and isn't it awesome? I think your tip about lunch and learns, we also do the same. We always want to keep training the team, and this is the whole organization need to be trained in it, because I think it's a bit of this data sovereignty piece in the auspices of AI is about, in fact, literacy. And it's about the learning behind and the behaviors of learning behind the organization. It's not just ticking a box, throw it into the server, and then hope that everybody reads it, because we already know that most people won't. So I suppose the other question, James, how have you seen, how do we stop, I suppose, businesses from getting distracted then in the same realm by sort of chasing leaderboards or software platforms, or, focusing on the wrong things within, like their own data moat and stuff like that?
So let me kind of replay the question back to you a little bit, like, because it is easy to get distracted with AI. Is your question around, like, how do we build our own moat, as opposed to, like, with respect to AI capability versus getting worried too much about the performance of any given model? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah. So there's a lot of shiny lights, and the snowflakes and the Databricks and everybody, they're all coming into the market, and they've gone for the enterprise market, and they're all sort of like, hey, we're the tool stack for you to get this, this right. How do you focus firstly on your own data moat, your own sort of protective layer that everybody has, as we said at the start? Everybody's got a spreadsheet or an SQL or a data warehouse, etc. So how do you focus on that? And really, what would you do first with your own sort of, let's call it data layer, data moat, rather than being distracted by sort of where you're at within your competitors and the world and all that sort of thing?
I might be oversimplifying a little bit here, but I always think of classic strategy approaches in situations like this. Like I've been in tech a long time, but I think back to when I did my MBA and I was in my strategy lecture. We were like, what makes us unique and different? And what is our unique proposition? What's our unique value proposition to our customers? Why do people pick us as opposed to other people? And for decades now, Silicon Valley has, and other tech centers around the world, have been using data as that unique selling proposition. They've been hoarding data, like Google, the biggest data hoarder and broker in the world. And there's a reason why they're at the top of the pile right now. That is now, that kind of philosophy now presents an opportunity for even small and medium organizations where we can have a look at the data that we have or the proprietary IP that we have, and we can start to think not about should we use OpenAI or Anthropic. We can start to think about, okay, how can we take this data that we already have and use it as a lever for amplifying the things that our business is already good at and known for. And that can be something like customer service. We might have a really long history of customer service, great response times, great people, great information, a huge knowledge base. How can we take advantage of that fantastic but unstructured information to train, fine-tune, design an AI system for ourselves using off-the-shelf tools or others that can allow us to do more of that work better, faster, cheaper, or in a more insightful way. And so that's the competitive moat that I see even small data sets being able to provide, like the likes you might see just in a OneDrive or in a Google Drive, where there's been people kind of preening that information for years and years and years to make sure that it is quality information. So yeah, I would encourage anybody who is getting hung up on model performance to try and see the wood for the trees, go back to strategy basics, understand what you're good at, try and amplify it, and identify the risks and try and mitigate them. It's as simple and difficult as that.
I think in the same realm of the strategy piece, it's about return on investment to me, in terms of if you're going to look at your data as the key function of how or key ingestion, I like to call it, and body of knowledge, you'd be okay, of how your AI is going to work and access, it needs lots to feed on, right? So I think it comes down to going to your organization and saying, where's the biggest bang for buck? Where are we going to get the best ROI? And is that, it's not in an agent setting. We come back up to the agent and we build the AI around it. But it's actually like one of my clients, I've got 20 years of financial data. I'd love to know what we're going to be looking like in 12 months' time based on that 20 years of data.
Yeah.
And we can then ingest that. We put that into a data lake, for example, from a data warehouse. And that then is stitched together. It's actually in an unstructured way, but it's stitched together from a data workflow. And then we build the agent or the POC, the proof of concept of that financial agent on top of that once that data lakehouse is built. Now, that has been identified out of tens, hundreds of use cases that organization would love to be able to do across customer service, sales, operations, etc. But that's been identified as if you put that in the hands of the senior leadership and board, it's going to allow them to do things in 10 seconds, what they wait a month for. And so that's where the return on investment is. And so then you build your AI on top and you choose your model, which we're going to get to in a sec when we talk about a few cool things coming through. But I think return on investment and looking at data and your own, your data sovereignty under that lens is probably a really good way from a strategy view as well. So that's great advice, James. In terms of SMEs and using their data for AI and like, is there anything else you want to touch on there? I mean, you just highlighted something really important about OneDrive, SharePoint, Google Drive. Any tips in there, like to get cracking about? I can give one tip. Don't use a spreadsheet with a macro and lots of tabs, because AI can't really feed on that. Any other sort of tips in that little, that the data that they might have?
Yeah, I think beginning to something that AI is good at is summarization and classification. And there are some automated tools coming through, depending on the subscription level that you're on, Like in our Google for Business subscription, we've got the ability to do AI classification of documents. Maybe tie your policy to that. Like that, like all
Yeah.
of a sudden you'll have a good idea of, like, in your admin screen, you'll be able to go and see like what the breakdown of all your information is and who's got access to what, stuff like that. That's really low hanging fruit that somebody could do today as well. How about you, Lou?
Yeah, look, I think getting under classification is really, really important, but not getting too, spending too much time on it. I think test
Mm,
and learn. I think actually putting together the data stack, training your proof of concept, you really, quick low hanging fruit searches from your AI on that,
yeah.
making sure the context is also baked into the AI so it actually knows what to retrieve and what to start thinking about. And I
Mm.
think that that's really important. So classification and context probably would be the two
Well,
core
yeah.
elements, but and just get
Classification
cracking.
comes into the context and improves. It can improve the responses that an AI might give depending
Yeah,
on the circumstances. So yeah, they work well hand in hand, 100%.
they certainly do. They certainly do, mate. And yeah, look, let's get into segment number 3, which we love to talk about the return of local hardware, and then we'll dive into a bit of news. But I want to start with local hardware because then we can talk about news a bit later. James, you're pretty much. I've been talking to you for a while about this now, and I think even back in Cairns when we caught up, probably 2 years ago, I think you said to me, Lou, we're starting to run our AI on our own servers again. We're moving it from the cloud in house, and we've got
Yeah,
a GPU, and we're underway. And I
yeah,
remember going, wow, talk us through that. Talk us through what's happening. I mean, we kind of know in our industry that the banks are doing it. They're all sort of running it in house. So it's
yeah,
all protectionist and things like that. Talk us
yeah.
through what's going on with local hardware.
Oh, look, in engineering land, local hardware is really important if you want to get the maximum value out of AI engineering, for example. So if you want to build software with AI. So in that respect, this kind of conversation has been happening for a long time. Why did we want to do it? Well, we have this aspiration of what if we could run our own tier 3 data center on a scale of 1 to 4, where 4 is the highest? How can we run a tier 3 data center that's air cooled, that has its own power supply, 100% green energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And we could run the latest and most ethically produced models on that. It's like all the things that people say can't be done. And it was causing us sound issues before we started recording. I
Yeah.
had to close the doors on it. It's literally sitting right behind me here.
How good. So what's in there now? What have you got in there? What's
So
in your local kit?
we've got a bunch of X Enterprise hardware in a small server rack. We've got a couple of workstation class NVIDIA graphics cards that can run small models at a really good pace. The amount of hardware that we have can, and this is kind of alluding to a future part of our run sheet here, but we could run 150 instances of OpenClaw on that box back there, and it's at enterprise levels of security, redundancy. It's all based on Red Hat software, which is a fancy kind of
Linux.
enterprise Linux
Yeah.
thing. It's like having our own data center with AWS on top, and we can run whatever we want on it. And we have the GPUs, and the GPUs allow us to run AI models, specifically LLMs, computer vision, etc., locally without it having to leave the house even.
I thought we'd left behind NT server and server farms in our, cupboards at work, whirring away and heating up and having to
Mm.
have fans in there and all those sort of things. I thought we'd left that world behind. I mean, is this going to en masse? Well, I'll ask you in a different way. En
Mm.
masse, is everyone going to stick with the cloud and
Mm.
run all of their data out there, or there's certain industries or reasons why you do what you just described?
Yeah, it comes back to the particular organization and industry that you're in. So the three approaches are: I run everything on premises, I run everything in the cloud, or I have a hybrid setup. Hybrid setups are becoming really popular for a couple of different reasons. And one of the reasons why we use Red Hat is it's portable between on-prem and the cloud. Like I can run it anywhere and it's accepted anywhere. It's kind of like, do I get an Amex or a MasterCard when MasterCard's accepted everywhere and Amex is not? So would I choose to use AWS's services, knowing that I can't go one for one porting all of my stuff over to Azure, for example, or going to on-prem. So to cut a long story short, it's a value proposition. And again, comes back to ROI and your strategy and resources you have available to you as well. But in the environments that I've been in finance and government and health, a hybrid setup is really valuable because it makes you portable. If your cloud provider is really expensive for you and you want optionality, you want a bit of a bargaining chip with your cloud provider, having your system be completely portable is a good idea. Conversely, there was a company based in Silicon Valley. They run a product called Hey, and they used to run a product called Basecamp. I think Basecamp is still around, but they worked out that it was actually cheaper for them to run their own data center and buy their own hardware and invest in their own IT staff and infrastructure staff. It depends on the scale, depends on the situation, but I strongly encourage anybody to have a look at, like, you can do it on your phone. I did it over Christmas. You can run AI on your phone. There's a Enclave AI, ENCLAVE. You can run a tiny little model LLM locally on your phone. It's super cool.
Enclave AI.
Yeah, be careful. It absolutely destroys your battery life.
Right.
But it's really fun just to have an AI running on your phone. And that's a great little proof of concept, right? Just to show you what a small model can do with limited resources.
Enclave.ai, I'm going to give that a go. And I think listeners give it a go as well. We need to test all this out. So let's dive into some of the latest news and some interesting things we've been mucking around with in the last couple of days and the last week.
You guys over at Advancer have been toying around with OpenClaw and having a look at Maltbook and start. Tell me what's happened. What's going on?
It's live right now. Literally, it's on we've hooked up a Slack Claw bot, and one of my guys, Reese, has actually hooked it up, and I was actually interrogating it today, and I had to bring in HR, which is Kerry, and the other part of the people and culture business that we run, and I brought that in because I was asking Clawbot in my Slack instance to do some things and then manage a couple of my team. And I was testing it out, and I said, "What happens if they resist? And what happens? What are you going to do?" And I was tagging them in, and it was very interesting. It actually didn't do all the hype that everybody's been talking about. Sort of it went off and did all those things, and it was going to blackmail people and all that sort of thing. I've been testing it, really at the face today, but it was very, very good. And I asked it then, what model are you running? And, I've got another one in a sec about security. So it said it's on Claude and Anthropic, it's Opus, and it's, basically, 4.6, I think it said to me, and it was awesome. I then put a support request in. We've got a support triage that automatically comes in through our platforms into to our Slack instance, and I put that in and tagged it in, and it actually fixed the 11 Labs question that someone had this afternoon, which was just awesome. Another massive question I asked is, what's your vulnerability? Because this is multi-agent technology. Listeners will recall this is the one last weekend. They've got a lot of publicity because it set up its own social network. I said, right, first thing, what's the security vulnerabilities of you, and what do we need to lock down? It then listed 4 things. It tagged in those guys I was talking about, and then it didn't hear back, and it went and fixed one of those things for us automatically. It said, look, I'll fix this easy one just to show good faith. I've locked this down, and it's a bit like when you do vibe coding and how you can do the fixes and see what you're doing. But I'm very interested to see that we don't have penetration, layers coming in. So work in progress, but very impressed. I believe that this is now agentic AI truly is here, and we need to move cautiously. But it's great to give it a crack. James, how about you, mate? Have you had a play around?
I have tried to play around. I tried to set it up securely, and it wouldn't exist. However, it's something that we've been working with the idea of a lot, and especially because it's open source and free, it makes it really attractive. And this kind of plays into, like, we already use a lot of agent harnesses. So which is what this is. It's essentially a code base that plugs into a large language model, and you You tell it to do stuff and it can connect to apps in your life. So like Gmail, it can send an email for you, or PowerPoint, it can make a PowerPoint for you, or what have you. So for us, we're already using a lot of similar agentic technologies. Like Claude Code is the classic one. We've got a couple of modifications to Claude Code that we use on our projects. OpenClaw, if we were to implement it for a customer, we would have our own bespoke implementation of it, where we would want to close those security vulnerabilities before deploying and really limit its access and capabilities to ensure that it's not going to, quote, go rogue and make the next Maltbook. Maltbook is fantastic, though. You got to admit, like, when thousands of AIs decide to get together and have a Reddit clone, within 12 hours, they've started their own religion. Even if it is a bit scary, it's also just hilarious to read.
Did you see the one about the I think it was a Claw agent sent someone out, they'd give them $100 if they actually went out and held a sign saying, an AI paid me $100 to hold this sign up. You know, something to watch, absolutely, as people play with it. But yeah, security is paramount. We're near the end of this amazing episode, and we probably look just quickly on Anthropic's 4.6. Your thoughts, because we're seeing superhuman uplift in terms of the performance. What about you, James? Anthropic's new 4.6 looking pretty good.
Yeah, 4.6 came out around the Super Bowl time. OpenAI brought
good
out
ads. Good ads.
Pretty funny ads.
Yeah.
OpenAI brought out 5.3, but Opus has it covered. Like OpenAI can't compete right now. So I think, like, in what we're seeing as far as performance is concerned, is it is exceptionally capable. The thing that we're enjoying most is the large context window. So one of the historical bottlenecks to productivity with Claude models has been that they only have a small context window. So it can only remember so much stuff that you give it before it starts to forget things. They've gone from 128K token context window to a 1 million token context window. They've called it beta, which usually in tech land means it's not very good yet. Please don't write us. But yeah, that 1 million context window puts it in the league of Google's Gemini models. And that's been their moat for a very long time. So this is Anthropic signaling to Google, we're coming for you. And so it's a big deal.
Yeah, awesome. Look, yeah, let's just a couple of takeaways really quickly, James. What's your top takeaway from this pod? Being at your world as well, like sovereignty is so important.
Yeah, I think sovereignty is a bit of a catch-all at the moment for a lot of different things. But why do we want sovereignty? It's because we want autonomy, we want agency, we want trustworthiness in our systems. It's really about, can I trust this thing that I'm interfacing with? And is it going to serve my purposes? And so in that respect, as business people, trust is currency. And so if you can demonstrate reliability, if you can demonstrate trustworthiness, you can demonstrate performance, you will get ROI on that. And that can be a really unique selling proposition into the future with respect to AI as well. Awesome. How about you, Blue?
Yeah, same, mate. Trust is so important, but intelligence is really important as well in terms of it's a commodity. Treat it as a commodity. Treat it as value. Your data stack is an asset, but don't race into this and just sort of tick the box. Don't just do this and treat it like, it's just something that we're doing. And the other takeout for me is know when you cannot upload the wrong piece of data, because it actually could affect your whole data sovereignty play and you could get into a lot of trouble. Yeah, that's a couple of really quick takeouts before we have to go. So do we want to quickly talk about the next episode, James?
Yeah, sure. The next episode, we're going to start looking in the realm of tools and particular use cases for AI.
Yeah.
When we say AI, we can mean a lot of different things, but we're going to start a bit of a journey of having a look into particular use cases, particular industries, particular types of tools. We might even get more into things like agent harnesses and what they do and how they work and how they might be useful in your organization as well. We've got one last mob of people to thank, though, Lou. Do you want to take it out for us?
Look, thank you to our partners at Prompt Cowboy. Today's episode is thanks to them. They're helping businesses harness AI without the guesswork, and they're building really smart prompts so you can build smart systems and automate your processes. So go to Prompt Cowboy and they've got you covered. And thanks to them for powering the show.
That is it for today's session. Thank you very much for joining Zero Shot. We're building Zero Shot for people like you, builders, who are also a little bit skeptical, strategists moving the needle in their industries. But we don't want to just talk at you. We genuinely enjoy seeing who's in the room with us, whether you're a CEO in Sydney, a developer in, I don't know, Texas or something, or an operator anywhere in between. Your perspective is what keeps this show anti-hype and clarity first, I think, as well, Lou.
I like that. Clarity first, yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly something to strive for. You can find us on LinkedIn. Search for me, James Gauci. Search for Llew Jury as well. Follow the Zero Shot page on there. Drop a comment on the latest post.
Yeah,
and tell us,
and subscribe as well, and make sure everybody subscribes. So we're going to say that, do this thing, do the subscribe thing.
Hit the bell, hit the subscribe button, hit the like on this post. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
we're real social media people now, Lou.
We could, mate. Well, we could do TikTok just here on TikTok. Like, I'm sure Yenia would love that. Like, she's now going, what are you guys doing?
Click the badge in the corner.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Lou. Always a pleasure. And thank you very much, Yenia, who always is behind the scenes producing our episodes.
Yay.
Thanks,
Love
Yenia.
Thank you, Yenia. Awesome. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next episode.